What's going on, my fellow Kino Lords? So tonight I'm going to be reviewing Frankenstein, which is written and directed by the one and only Guillermo Del Toro. So let me just say this briefly about Guillermo Del Toro. I think he's a brilliant filmmaker overall. The dude has so much imagination, so much passion in all of his films, and the dude is just still able to put so much of his love for the art of cinema into each and every film that he's made so far. And I just love that about the guy. He kind of like broke out into the scene amongst other Mexican filmmakers who are, at this point, in my opinion, are like in legendary status. That's Alfonso Cuarón and Alejandro González Iñárritu. And honestly, like, as much as I think Guillermo del Toro is great, I do kind of lean a little bit more towards Alfonso and Alejandro. And I think that's mostly just because, like, I just have more of an appreciation and admiration for the stylistic approach that they have with the art of filmmaking. Because Guillermo has a very, like, Hollywood style in the way that he presents all of his movies. There's almost like a very, like, spectacle element to the way that Guillermo, packages his movies. And I think that's like a big difference, between him and the other Mexican filmmakers. But I still think, as I mentioned, that he's great. And I always look forward to any movie that he comes out with. And this time we got Frankenstein. Like, he's tackling such a huge, iconic piece of horror art. Like, Frankenstein is one of the universal monsters. Like, he's top dog. This is a big deal. I mean, it's basically the same as Robert Eggers tackling Dracula with Nosferatu last year. And now Robert Eggers is also going to tackle Wolfman, which is crazy. But anyway, Guillermo has so much talent. The dude knows what he's doing. So I had no doubt that Frankenstein was going to deliver something that was at the very least effective and enjoyable. And that's really the way I would describe Frankenstein. I think that Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is effective and enjoyable. I'm honestly, like, not super in love with it. I'm not that huge on it. But I think that there are enough qualitative elements to the movie. There's enough things about it that I admired that I can walk away from it saying that, hey, I enjoyed this movie. And when it hits Netflix, I definitely would recommend people to check it out. And before I really get into, like, the criticisms that I have with this movie, I'll start by just talking about the things that I actually did enjoy about it. First thing that really comes to mind is more of, like, the visual quality of this movie. Like, I think that from start to finish, the cinematography and just the way that Guillermo, like, presents, important integral moments in this movie, I think is what really makes this movie effective. It's like a huge part of the experience, in my opinion. First of all, if you really love the gothic aesthetic, it's got it. But even if you just like this very, dark and even, like, slightly romantic gothic tone, like, if that's something that you're hugely into, I think this will also give you a lot to chew on with that. And also, I feel like this movie does a good job at trying to present the story in a slightly different way, and I respected it for that. Because really we get two perspectives in this movie. We get Victor Frankenstein's perspective, and then we get, Frankenstein's monster's perspective. And the way that it kind of, like, paced those things out and structured it, I thought was really interesting. And then, like, kind of gave me another hook to get engaged again, especially at the halfway point when we start getting into Frankenstein's monster's perspective. And that was something, like, stylistically that I was on board with. I also really enjoy that it's it's a deeply human movie. Like, this is a movie that I think very well demonstrates what we should value in being human, but also at the same time showing like the darkest sides of humanity and why we just suck as a species. Um, and I think it demonstrates those themes quite well. And and yeah, like I think mostly that is most of the pros I have with this movie. I also really liked, like, I guess one other pro is that there's a handful of like really intense and unsettling and brutal scenes. Like the brutality in this movie like starts right out the gate. It's just like instantly you're thrown into just like a brutal sequence. And I think that's really cool. And you know, it's not like the most brutal thing throughout the experience, but you got like these pockets where you're like, damn, like that is fucking, that is gnarly. Like there's some gnarly scenes in this movie. It's very like CGI-y here and there, so you can kind of tell it's like meh, but it's still effective for what it's trying to do. Um, and and yeah, like I think I don't know if I was gonna say much more beyond that, but yeah, like there are things about this movie that I enjoyed and I admired and overall like dug. So it's just the fact that I feel like this movie like had a lot of potential, and I feel like some of it was kind of squandered. Um, Let me start off by saying this, transitioning into the negatives. I think that Victor Frankenstein, the character played by Oscar Isaac, which first of all, really great performance from Oscar Isaac. Um, but his character, I feel like, is so one dimensional. This movie, I feel like, could have done a way better job at giving more like complex layers to who he is. But instead, he's just like a vicious, like tormented asshole who's just like high on his own supply, and he's just like super like I don't know. He's very very unlikable, and the movie goes well out of its way to establish how unlikable he is. And it makes it to where I don't find him all that interesting, and I don't really care about the thing that happens with him in the end because I can hear some people arguing that, you know, well, it's intentional because of like a kind of redemption arc we get at the third act, but to me that's not enough. He's just not the most interesting thought-provoking character, and I thought that was a bit of a bummer. Christoph Waltz is in this movie, and I liked his character. I thought his character was great, but he doesn't like his character doesn't lead into anything all that substantial. Like it's his character almost is there as a plot device. And I feel like that was a little unfair to the character. And look, I understand maybe that's what the source material is. I'm not like super familiar with like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'm not like a super fan of any of that, so I don't know. But I feel like Christoph Waltz, as well written of a character that he was, because he's basically like the guy that gives Victor Frankenstein like all the financing, all the budgeting. He's like, do whatever you want to do. Here's all the fucking money. And then obviously like later on in the film we learn more about his like ulterior motives behind the funding. But it's an interesting character and it's an interesting performance, and it just I feel like it doesn't amount to anything very significant, and that was it. That was disappointing to me. And another thing about this movie that I'm not sure, like I feel like I'm gonna be alone on this, but we'll see. I really wasn't the biggest fan of the Frankenstein creature design. Um, and look, I'm not like I understand what this movie was kind of going for because it wants it wants to deeply humanize Frankenstein's monster. It wants us to look at him less as a monster and more as a human. And I think that's fine, and I understand the intention, but it could have been more creepy. Like to me, he does not look all that unsettling. Um, they go out of their way to make him like look more sexy and more attractive. And in one way that's cool, but like in another way, I feel like it's kind of crucial for Frankenstein's monster to be a bit creepy, and I did not feel any creepiness really from him, at least from the aesthetic itself. Um and that was something that I was disappointed. Like to me, like his character design looks like one of those like he looks like an engineer from that movie Prometheus, except like he's patched up and maybe not as buffed out. But like overall, like there's not much to his character design that really stood out to me and left an impact. So I don't know. I'm putting that out there. I don't know. I really don't know how everybody else is gonna feel about that, but that's out there now. Um, and like overall, I just feel like this movie. Look, as much as I love Del Toro, fucking dude's a brilliant filmmaker. He has a very Hollywood and conventional way of presenting his movies. I mean, obviously, he has his own flair to it and his own imagination that he brings to the table. But he has this very like Hollywood slash spectacle way of presenting his movies. And sometimes that can be a fault, in my opinion, especially when you have like structural problems to where I feel like there's so much of this movie, almost all of it, I feel like is characters narrating stuff, and then us going into the past and going through all these details. And especially like in the first 20 minutes, like I couldn't even really get into the movie because it spends so much time like with Oscar Isaac recalling his past, like in his childhood, leading up to his like motives as an adult. And it's all presented so like through narration and just through seeing the events. There's some moments where like the narration is literally explaining shit that we're watching. And I'm like, what is really like the point of us lingering so much on this? Like this is all information I feel like we could have been delivered that could have been delivered to us in a more subtle and creative way. And instead, like we're spending so much time like really going through the motions. And I feel like that's a huge issue that I have with this movie. I feel like there's a lot of runtime in between of us just kind of like going through the motions to establish information and context. And sometimes it kind of made the film a bit of a chore to get through as opposed to being like truly immersed into the entire experience. Um so so yeah, I don't know. Like this movie, it's one of those things to where you watch it and you walk away from it and you're like, okay, like I enjoyed that. I liked it. But then you can't help but feel like it doesn't really give you much to chew on. It's it's also, I think it's way too long. It's like 2 hours and a half. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of this movie that kind of feels like a chore to get through because of that conventional structure and style. Um and even though it's like good, you're like, okay, I'm glad I watched it. You don't really walk away from it, you know, with, to me, in my opinion, like all that much to talk about. It's kind of movie you watch, you're like, it's good, and then you move on. And even the last few movies that Del Toro released, Nightmare Alley and Pinocchio, like I think those are actually great movies. I remember at the time when Nightmare Alley came out, like people were saying, like, oh, this is like a misstep from him, or whatever. I actually thought that was a great movie. But even with those movies that I think are great, I don't really, it doesn't linger in my mind after like maybe a few months after watching it. Like it kind of goes away. Nobody talks about them. I surely don't really talk about them. And I don't know. Like his movies lately, like even though I think they have been great, they haven't really been like leaving that impact. And yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how everybody else is gonna land on this. I think like if you're just like if you're just what like your average Netflix viewer and you see Frankenstein and you watch it, I think that you're gonna really like it. Like I think that you're gonna be like, damn, this was a really cool movie, and that's fair. Like it is a cool movie. Um, but you know, as a whole, like I don't know, it just didn't really do that much to really give me much to chew on. Like that's like a whole thing with it. Like it's all that's really my disappointment is that I walk away from it really with not much of interesting things to talk about. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's all I'll say really. I've honestly got to talk more about it than I thought I was going to. Um, But that's it. With that being said, I'll give Frankenstein a strong 6 out of 10. Just that rating alone might make people fucking hate me. I'm not sure because I don't know. I saw it a bit early. I saw it in 35 millimeter at my local art house theater, so that was pretty cool. But I'm curious. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know if this is gonna be a hot take or not. So I'm just throwing this out there. But really interested to see how the reception will be overall with this movie. I feel like most people will like it though. I feel like most people will end up liking it. But yeah, that's all I got to say about it, guys. That's all I got to say. I hope you guys really enjoyed my review for Frankenstein. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.